So yes, so welcome everyone to our Visualizing the Future public symposium that will run today and tomorrow. And then we have the workshop on Friday for those who registered for it. I'm Justin Jock. I'm one of the PIs on the Visualizing the Future grant, along with Andy Ratowski and Angela Zoss. We have at the end of today, we're going to have a sort of report out about the grant. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it right now. And you'll also learn more about it sort of throughout all of the activities. But it is an IMLS funded grant. We have a website. It's just visualizing the future. It's linked right there at the bottom. I think it's .github.io. And it's a project to develop a literacy-based instructional and research agenda for library and information professionals, with the aim to create a community of praxis focused on data visualization. And so this symposium we see as a really great opportunity to sort of conclude the activities of the grant. It's been going on for about 3 years now, and to hopefully continue to build this community. So just a quick overview of today's events. We had a sort of a very nice meet and greet with a fair number of people, mostly on the East Coast. We are right now in the middle of the symposium welcome. And then at 12:30, I'm really looking forward to Jonathan Kane, AUL for Research and Learning at Columbia University Libraries, will be giving a keynote about the library's role in data education. And then we'll have a small unconference with small group discussions. And then finally, between 4 and 4:45 p.m., we'll have the official project report from the grant. So if you want to know more about the grant, please join us for that. And then Thursday, everything's up. I'm not going to go over this one, because everything's on the website and you should get it in email as well. And so just a few things about logistics. So live captions are available. We're really glad to have a captioner with us, and thank you so much for doing that. So just hit the live caption button and you'll see that. If you feel free to share your own suggestions or thoughts via chat. And make sure to change it from, it might default to all panelists and attendees. And then feel free to chat Angela, Andy, or I with any sort of technical issues. And all links and extra information will be available on the Symposium website, which is linked right there, but it is visualizingthefuture.github.io/symposium, but you can also just go to the main one and click on Symposium and you'll have it. And just a reminder that we have a code of conduct. It should have been emailed out to all of everyone who registered. So you can, I'd ask that you familiarize yourself with the code of conduct. If there are issues that come up, please feel free to email that visualizingthefuture@umich.edu will go to Angela, Andy, and I. You can also chat us or send us a direct message on the Slack, the Visualizing the Future Slack, and maybe someone could put the link to if anyone wants to sign up for that in the chat. And we've also put together an anonymous reporting form, which should be linked. You can get to the slides from the website. And I think we could also probably put the link in the chat for that as well. So, and then finally, we have a number of more or less open sessions with Q&A. And so we just have some kind of guidelines that we wanted to give everyone for asking questions in order to make the Q&A both as productive and as respectful for our speakers and the community as possible. So the first is to make sure that your question is in fact a question and not a short speech. Make sure that they aren't actually trying to say, make sure that you in asking the question aren't trying to say that you should have given the paper. Also think about whether or not the question needs to be posed and answered in front of everyone. If it's something that you need to, and then also figure out if the question is asking the speaker to do work that really the question asker should do, if it's in terms of thinking through things or doing additional research. And a lot of this was taken from this thread by Eve Tuck that was on Twitter that went around. I think it was a few months ago, although the pandemic, I've completely lost track of time. It could have been anywhere between yesterday and years ago, but it happened in the past on Twitter, and you may or may not have seen it, but it's linked there. So anyway, that's the end of our introduction. I really want to hand it over to Angela and Negin, but if you have any issues, please feel free to message Angela, Andy, or I, and we will get it sorted out as quickly as possible. We really want to make this a productive and welcoming space in order to really do the work of helping build this community around data visualization support in libraries. And hopefully you all will enjoy and find the events edifying. So thank you all for being here. And I'll now pass it over to Angela and Nikki.
Thanks so much, Justin. Let me get my screen set up. I'm going to be sharing some slides here, and then we wanted to make sure that the conference, or sorry, symposium, started off with something that really got everybody engaged in the topics we're going to be talking about today. So we are going to be using the remaining time in our welcome session to talk a little bit about positionality, and I'm going to do a quick thing here so I can get my speaker notes visible, and then I think I'm all set. So this is part of some work that we've been doing in a small group. So some of the organizers, Justin and myself, and then two of our fellows, Negin and Megan, have contributed to this effort. And I want to thank all of them so much for helping me prepare these slides today, and I will deliver them now. So I'm happy to join Justin in welcoming everyone to the symposium. And we're all excited about our upcoming keynote presentation. But as we begin our time here together, we think it's important to position ourselves and consider what we bring to the work we'll be doing here. So we're gonna do a bit of a discussion and exercise here. And the goals of the introduction and exercise include the following. We will undertake an admittedly brief exploration of how the histories and practices of data work reify systems of oppression. We're going to amplify and engage with some of the work of people who are pushing back against these systems. And finally, we'll take a little bit of time to reflect on our own positionality in these systems. And we'll end with about 5 minutes to spare before the keynote, so we'll have a little bit of a break. When we talk about positionality, we're taking an approach similar to the definition presented here by Luis Sanchez, which is positionality is the notion that personal values, views, and location in time and space influence how one understands the world. And also in issues of positionality challenge the notions of value-free research that have dismissed human subjectivity from the processes that generate knowledge and identities. And so challenging this idea that we have objective truth that we can access, and instead talking about what we're bringing to the world that influences how we interpret things. And so taking the time to explore our positionality today gives us a chance to think about the experiences and assumptions and values we're bringing to our work. And by understanding where we're coming from, we can be reminded of the importance of staying connected to the people and places around us, and also staying open to other ways of understanding the world. For the next few days in this symposium, we're gathering together to talk about data and data visualization. And I think if there's anything that is absolutely required for the work we do, it is that data has to exist. We can't clean or visualize or try to understand data in whatever form it might take if it hasn't been collected. This quote is from Abigail Echohawk, the director of the Urban Indian Health Institute and the executive vice president of the Seattle Indian Health Board. One of the ways that there is a continuing genocide against American Indians and Alaska Natives is through data. When we are invisible in the data, we no longer exist. When I see an asterisk that says not statistically significant, or they lump us together with Pacific Islanders and Asian Americans, you can't lump racial groups together. That is bad data practice. She speaks here and elsewhere about decolonizing data. a movement by Indigenous data communities to combat various forms of harm experienced by the Indigenous communities because of problematic data practices rooted in longstanding histories of settler colonial violence. The ongoing erasure of Indigenous peoples in data sets and research is just one of these harmful practices. Here are just a few resources that can help provide an introduction to ways Indigenous communities are pushing back against other types of harm that are done through data work. We've already mentioned that erasure happens when data are collected using problematically broad demographic categories like other, instead of using disaggregation and maybe even oversampling to gather data that will be appropriately descriptive. There are additional types of harm, which include misrepresentation and exclusion, devaluing other ways of knowing, and stealing data. And this last harm has given rise to a very active field called Indigenous data sovereignty. So Indigenous data sovereignty means that Indigenous peoples have inherent and inalienable rights relating to the collection, ownership, and application of data about them and about their lifeways and territories. A similar notion is often summarized by the phrase, nothing about us without us. The people represented within data sets should be included in every step of the data process and must retain ownership over their data in perpetuity. The data community must work harder to see the people behind the data and divest itself from practices that strip people of ownership over their own data. But it's not really enough to explore the harms done within our profession. It is also important to reflect on the physical spaces where we live and work. And on behalf of myself and my fellow organizers specifically, I want to acknowledge that our homes and the institutions where we work inhabit space that was stolen, often violently, from people whose ancestors are still here and thriving, and who are continuing their stewardship of the land despite ongoing colonial structures that exploit it. This violence over space and resources continues to happen today, and reflecting on our positionality also means exploring our physical locations and what is currently happening around us. So that leads us into what we're going to spend the next approximately 7 minutes doing. We're going to participate in a group positionality exercise where we can make some time to think about these issues and learn from each other. This document will also stay open. So if you want to continue to contribute to this document and undertake some of the exercises, there's still time to do that past this session. Our goals are to encourage reflection on land and positionality, to engage with our participation in systems of oppression, and collect resources for further study. So just please follow the link here and also in the chat, which I will make sure is in the chat. Yes, it is in the chat, thank you. And we will be working in the Google Doc collaboratively. So let me bring that up. And I consider this to be one of the really wonderful movements that has happened in even virtual meetings that I've attended. People often, when it comes to land acknowledgements, refer to a visualization. And so as part of the visualization community, I'm always so excited to see people really engaging deeply with visualization. And so one of the opportunities in this activity is also to reflect on the use of visualization to spur this more critical exploration. So the visualization we're talking about is Native Land Digital. If you haven't seen it, I hope you enjoy taking time to look at it. I've put it in the chat. And what it will bring up is a map that is focused on North America. So if you are joining us from a place outside of North America, this exercise might not directly apply to you, but we hope that there are other resources that you might know about to encourage you to learn more about your positionality in your place of living and working. And so as this loads, it is beyond North America now. Fabulous. Okay. Sorry to dismiss it. I maybe only look at the North America part. Maybe I just forget. But what you should see when you approach when you open this map is you should see something like the following. And the exercise we'd like you to take a few minutes to do is to visit the map, to search for your address, to explore the overlapping territories in your area, and to answer the questions below. So take a little bit of time, explore the map, spend some time reflecting on what it means to be part of this, this part of the world where you live, and what else you feel like you need to learn about to be able to engage in these issues more effectively. With that, I may stop sharing because I don't want people to feel like they're gonna be typing directly on the recording, but I think we want to encourage people to type in chat as well. We're open to people unmuting if they want to share some thoughts verbally, but we'll just take another 3 or 4 minutes or so to work on this exercise as a group. I'm seeing so many great thoughts come out in the document so far. I know this isn't a lot of time to spend on this activity, but I'm really grateful to everyone for spending some time on this. While people are still working, I just want to emphasize something that is written at the top of our exercise file, which is that we know that many Indigenous peoples are doing a lot of work on Indigenous data justice, and we don't want to create more work with this activity. This is an activity designed to encourage people who do not usually think about Indigenous justice issues to take time to think about it. And we do want to recognize that members of the audience are likely already heavily engaged in this kind of work. But we hope that those of you who haven't had a chance to do this kind of work are feeling welcomed to do it now, and to consider how this sort of exercise can influence our teaching of data and visualization topics. Are there any thoughts people want to share, having taken a look at this map and some of the questions, or any ideas people want to share publicly about how our profession could do more to advocate for Indigenous data justice? Maybe there's work you've already been doing that you'd like to share.
I wanted to quickly share something here. This is Andy Rakowski, one of the other co-PIs. Something that I thought was really powerful here locally in Los Angeles, the Autry Center, which is a pretty large local institution, American West history, is actually making their spaces available to Indigenous groups in Los Angeles and prioritizing that space. And whenever you know, a group would like to use some of their meeting spaces, it's going to be available to people. And I thought that's something that beyond land acknowledgement statements at our institutions, actually kind of finding meeting spaces, working with local indigenous groups and saying, hey, we have this meeting space. We do this for faculty and students. Why not do it to our community members and sort of give that space over, and whenever people want to use them, whenever groups would like to use them, they can use them. I thought that was a really powerful example that I just, kind of learned about recently, and was like, this is something we could do. This is something that we can kind of work on.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Andy.
Here at the University of New Mexico, in the library, we created the Indigenous, well, I did not create it, the Indigenous Libraries program. And it's a space in the library that's welcoming to students from the various pueblos and nations from the region, well, anywhere actually. So that's been around for about 12 years now. And so it's the previous director, he did a lot of programming, which was very good. And now we're in the process of getting a new person.
Thanks so much for sharing. So to leave a little bit of a break before we do switch over to our keynote, I'll encourage us to sort of wind down and maybe spend a couple minutes taking a step back and taking a little break if you need it, and we'll get set up with our speaker and be right back with our keynote right around 12:30. Thanks, everyone.